how much do we understand about what's going on? I'll tell you a story. Now, I say these things in different places. I don't think I told this story to you. I was living in Baltimore, and there's a family there. There was a whole community of people. A lot of them worked in Social Security. They had minyanim there. They had shiurim there. They were very respected because they're very reliable workers. And one of the families, a lot of children, just wonderful people. And they had a child who was born with very serious malfunction. And after several months, the child died. And they sat Shiva. Now, I know it's controversial whether they should sit Shiva or not. I never asked anybody why they did that, but they did. And we were very close to Amram Taub, Zechron Livracha, very great person in Baltimore. And he asked me to drive him to the Shiva, which I did. And he said to the couple, I want to tell you a story. The Maggid of Mizrich, you know who the Maggid of Mizrich was? He took over for the Baal Shem Tov, the leadership of the Hasidic community. One day after Shachris, he told the people, his Talmidim there, keep your talis and tefillin on and get in the wagon. So they got in the wagon and they traveled for hours deep in the forest. They came to a place where there were a few houses. Knock on the door of one of the houses, and there's a Jewish family in there just about to perform a bris milah. Well, they're all alone, they and the moil, and now all walks in Maggid with his disciples. They have a minyan. It's a great simcha. So they perform the circumcision, and the mother takes the baby into a room, another room, and they're sitting there, and I guess eating whatever meager provisions that are over there. And after a while, there's a scream from the other room, and the mother comes out and says the baby has died. A half hour after the bris milah. So from great rejoicing and happiness to terrible sadness and disappointment and depression. Finally, the Maggid calls for order, and he says, I have to tell you something. Rav Yosef Karo, we call him the Beis Yosef, he's the author of the original Shulchan Aruch, which is written from the Sephardi point of view, and was added to by Rav Moshe Isserles from the Ashkenazi point of view. And he also wrote a classical commentary on Maimonides' work and classical commentary on the Torah. Great, great scholar. And the Maggid said he was born a sickly baby, and because of that, he didn't have his bris milah on the 8th day. And when he was nifter and left this world, he started ascending levels, came to a certain level, and they said, this is it. Not a glass ceiling, it's a brick ceiling. You're not going any higher than this. Here on up is only for what people, men who had bris milah on the 8th day. Well, he didn't accept it. He said, I want to go higher. So they had a whole discussion, and they said to him, listen, the ceiling is the ceiling. The only way you can go higher is go back and get it. He said, yes. And the Maggid said to the family, your baby was given the soul of Rav Yosef Karo to give that soul its final perfection. Don't think that the fact that your baby died is because God hates you and you've done something wrong and you have to repent and so forth and so on. In your case, you were given a gigantic privilege to be the agents through which that soul got its final perfection. And I'm saying, but it was obvious to them, the proof of it is that we're here. How did we know to come here from 100 miles away, with no SMS? Just because I was inspired with this information to bring it to you so that you shouldn't misunderstand what's happening to you. So, Rabbi Taub told this story to this wonderful family, and he said, I can tell you the same thing. You're wonderful people. There's nothing wrong with you. You haven't done anything wrong. I'm telling you, if you had this baby and the baby died, it's only because you were chosen to do something for that baby, not because you have to feel any sense of guilt or failure, nothing you have to correct. I'm telling you, that's the message in it. So I thought to myself, after I heard that, do I know what's going on? I mean, things happen. Do I know what they mean? Do I know why they happen? If that could be the explanation of an event like this, how would I know how to interpret anything that's going on? I think the right conclusion is that typically we don't know how to interpret it. And then the second point is you don't have to know how to interpret it. Because really what I want to know is, what should I do? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a set of rules. He said, when in these circumstances, this is what you do. So at the very least, I can know that what I'm doing is the right thing to do. Sometimes there are revelations of at least some aspects of what's going on, and I can relate to them. I can use them to inform myself and also create a richer when he was kavana, and a richer intention and understanding of what I'm doing, and that's important also. You should serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with your mind, not just with your limbs. But often we don't know much of what's going on, and sometimes we don't understand it at all. You think as you go through life, you'll find instances, maybe not a lot, but I think everybody goes through some of them, where something happens and you interpret it in a certain way, and it turns out really to be the opposite. There's a famous story which is probably told about lots of people in different circumstances, but it really has happened numbers of times where the person is racing to make the flight, and one thing and another gets in his way. One story, the taxi cab driver was just lazy and irresponsible, didn't care whether he got him there on time or not, and he missed the flight, and he cursed the taxi cab driver, and he's angry, and then he hears that the flight crashed and everybody died. Oh, now he feels much differently about it. He's not angry anymore. Maybe he won't thank the taxi cab driver because that's not what he had in mind, but he's certainly not angry. It saved his life. And there are many things like that, things that seem to be, I'll tell you the other side of the story. You can read about this. It's really fascinating. Read about people who win the lottery. For most people, it ruins their lives. It ruins their lives. For one thing, from then on, you don't know if you have any real friends. Because maybe they're just making up to you because they want some of your money. And there are all sorts of people who try to cheat you out of your money. And the more possessions you have, the more worries you have, because you want to protect them. You don't want them to be just frittered away or lost or misappropriated. For most of the people, it ruined their lives. I don't know if you heard about this. There was a case in America where a young girl fell down a deep shaft, and it was narrow, and she's at the bottom of the shaft, and they found a very skinny fireman who could wriggle down the shaft and get to her. In the meantime, they were dropping her food, and it was like, it took a long time, and he finally got her out. Well, they were heroes. Her life is saved, and he saved her life. Somebody did a follow-up 10 years later. 10 years later, the parents were divorced, and the fireman committed suicide, and because the movies came in and said, we want to make a movie. Really? We'll give you $1 million, you $2 million. Why do I only get one? He's getting two. I mean, how should we divide it? And shall we portray it this way or that way? Once the big stakes were involved, you see families go to pieces over inheritances, even large inheritances. How shall it be divided? Who shall get what? And who should manage it? So the idea that we really understand what's going on and can predict what's going on is very, very questionable. So that being the case, we certainly shouldn't just, we spoke about this indirectly on another occasion the other day. We shouldn't just jump to a conclusion, well, that's great or that's terrible. It's very, very difficult to know. I'll just give you what happened yesterday. A year and a half ago, there was the terrible disaster of October 7th, and the obvious message in it was, you really didn't know what was going on, did you? You thought you did. You had everything figured out. We know what their motivation is. If we use these economic and sociological ploys, we'll keep them pacified, and they're not interested in doing a war. Oh, it was all figured out. All figured out. It turned to be totally, drastically, tragically wrong. Okay, fine. So now we know they're enemies, and we know they're terrible. But listen, we have listening devices, and we have spies. We pay off people to give us information about enemies and so forth and so on. And we're fighting a war with them. And we're keeping our fingers on everything. Nobody anticipated that yesterday 30 people would go out and start fires. Nobody anticipated it. They managed to orchestrate 30 people to go out and start fires. Nobody found out about it. Nobody exposed them. Nobody found it on the social media. And they started a disastrous fire. Maybe the biggest fire in the history of the of the state of Israel. So, a tap on the shoulder. You don't know what's happening. Keep it in mind. Don't make the mistake again. They made it in Yom Kippur War 51 years ago. They made it a year and a half ago. And this time also, no, you didn't catch them. You didn't stop them. You didn't know what was going on. Learn the lesson. There's a whole question about what's the status of random devices. Random devices. You think a random device that pops off for no reason at all is just going to make things worse. You want things as organized as possible. You want things to happen for a reason. And to put in a random element into a computer or a random element into the body, and that would just make things worse. But that's dead wrong. It's dead wrong. That's how the immune system works. The immune system is sending out antigens of a wide variety as possible with no information about what's coming in. It does this spontaneously when nothing's coming in. What's the point of it? Well, the point of it is there's no way for the immune system to anticipate what's coming in or what it's like. So it sends out the widest variety of antigens in the hopes that whatever comes in, something will catch it because we've got a tremendously wide variety. Now it's set up in such a way that when the antigen catches one, it sends a signal back to the home base. I found one like this. Oh, you found one like that? Then production goes into based on the information about this, that more and more find them, and it sends back better and better information, and it fine-tunes the antigen to attack the particular invader that came in. If you didn't have the randomness there, then you'd be overwhelmed by unexpected visitors, which you wouldn't be able to even identify until it was too late. So the random element there plays a very important role. If you believe in evolution, I don't recommend it. I think there are lots of reasons not to believe in evolution. But if you believe in evolution, that's essentially what goes on. You know very well, if you understand how sexual reproduction works, the genes carry the various traits in certain ways, and the combinations of genes, given the human population, there are quintillions of possible combinations. You never duplicate the combination of genes. Identical twins are where you already have a fertilized cell, you already have a full cell with a full set of DNA, and it splits in two. But when you're taking the DNA from the father, DNA from the mother, putting it together and looking at that combination, you'll never duplicate it. Why? Because you don't know what the environment's going to do. So it's very advantageous to have a wide variety of types. So if the environment becomes very cold, some people in your group, some elements in your group will be able to adapt to the cold, and the group will be able to continue. And life in general is like that. Life is so tremendously varied that whatever catastrophe takes place, some form of life, like bacteria, they say, will survive no matter what. Some total of the weight of bacteria outweighs all other life combined. There's a lot of them. So they say, again, you're producing a wide variety because you don't know what to anticipate. So random elements can be very important. I just happened to gather some examples where they use them in mathematics, they use them in other types of engineering. So from thinking, well, it's just going to mess things up if it doesn't have anything that triggers it and triggers it right, so then it's just going to waste time and energy. No, actually not. Actually play a very important role in the overall construction of what's going on. So these are things that if you look at things and you follow developments of you find that there are always unexpected developments. AI is providing many unexpected developments, including the overwhelmingly naive and destructive attitude of treating AI as if it were an agent, and as if it were a person. That you talk to it and converse with it and take compliments and give compliments back and so forth and so on. When AI understands absolutely nothing at all. There's no understanding there whatsoever. It's all word association. I'll just give you one example of what I'm talking about, and then we'll go on to the next question. Let's say I give you a machine, and you punch in a number here, a number there, and press a button, and you get the sum of the two numbers every time. Well, it's an adding machine. Obviously, that's what it gives you. It gives you the sum. How does it do it? Well, there are rules for adding, and of course it's electronic machine, so it does it very fast. It gives you the answer. But maybe not. Maybe it's just a spreadsheet with a lookup. You got all the numbers going this way and all the numbers going that way, and when you add 17 plus 32, it goes 17, 32, and gives you the answer. It's not adding at all. It's just a lookup machine. You wouldn't know from the outside what it's doing. So the fact that you get a certain type of answer doesn't tell you how it's doing it. And then when you get, if you ask the thing questions, and I recommend this, there's a way to get a really unprogrammed answer from the machine. Ask it a question that you yourself thought up and didn't publish. And you yourself know the answer to. I have a bunch of questions like that. I can't find it on the net, because it isn't on the net, because I never published it. And you get sometimes the most bizarre answers just on the basis of associating words. I'll give you one example, which comes from my background. Maybe you've heard the idea that the ancient Greeks thought up this idea. Suppose I say, what I'm saying now is false. What should you do with that? Well, let's see. Should you accept it? Okay, you accept it. But what it says is, don't accept me because I'm bad. I'm false. So if I accept it, if you accept it, then really a good reason not to accept it. And if you decide not to accept it, why are you not accepting it? Because it isn't reliable, because it isn't true. But then, if you're not accepting it because it isn't true, that's exactly what it says. It says that it isn't true. Then it becomes correct, so you should accept it. And the Greeks pointed out that there's no consistent attitude towards a sentence like that. That's called the liar paradox, if you want to look it up. The simple is, this sentence is false. What do you do with that sentence? Okay? So this is what I asked ChatGPT 3.5. I asked it, what about the sentence, this sentence is true? Is it true or false? You hear, don't you, that's not the same thing? The sentence I'm talking about up till now was this sentence is false. I asked it, this sentence is true. The first answer I got, that's a famous paradox of the Greeks. This sentence is false, and if it's true, it's false, and false is true, the whole song and dance. So I write back in, wait a minute, I didn't say the sentence is false. I said the sentence is true. And it writes out, yes, it's an ancient Greek paradox, the whole same song and dance again. So I said, my sentence is, this sentence is true. And it doesn't say false. The last word, I said like 3 times, right? Oh, we're so sorry. This sentence, and it says, it is true. I said, yeah, why? How do you know that? Why do you say it is true? And here's what the answer I got. Because it says that it's true. That's why it's true. Because it says that it's true. Aha. But why do you think that it's telling the truth? It's just a sentence. Why would you think that because it says that it's true, it's got to be true? This is idiocy. This sentence is true is discussed in literature, but if you compare it with the literature, the sentence is false. It's like 1/10,000th of the literature is about this sentence is true, and all the rest about this sentence is false. So it's going with the association. This sentence is, and it's short, and it's closed, and you're asking me whether it's true or false. Aha, it's got to be the liar paradox. Without any understanding at all. But there are many, many, many other examples of just not getting it right. I put I washed my coat on the washing machine. I put it out in the sun to dry, and it took 2 hours to dry. Now I washed 5 coats in the washing machine, and I'm putting them out in the sun to dry. How long will it take to dry? 10 hours. No, it'll take save 2 hours because each coat dries separately, But 5 times 2 is 10. Yeah, it is. That's right. On the math table, it says 5 times 2 is 10. It's just not relevant here. So if you think that when you get an answer which parallels an intelligent answer, that you got it from intelligence inside, you're making the same mistake. I would retitle it artificial pseudo-intelligence. It's an artificial system which sometimes can mimic an intelligent outcome, but it's not coming from intelligence at all. And it can make a practical difference. Anyway, that's just some thoughts on the idea that we often don't know what's going on, don't appreciate what's going on. Yeah.
I just asked Rabbi Ziskin the question, and please don't answer if it steps on your toes, but yourself and Rabbi Ziskin have the unfortunate, you've shared the same misfortune, which is losing your first wife after a long marriage. So I'm going to try to ask you the same. I don't recall exactly how I asked him this question, but I'm curious to see what you'd say. He was talking about the beauty of his second marriage and how it changed his perspective and this and that. But it seems that the Jewish opinion that we hear, like when we're young, they tell us about marriage now is that, to be open and flexible, and that there are actually multiple options for people you can make it, like potential soulmates that you can make it work with, but that ultimately it's a choice, and you have to, that marriage and love is a choice. And so when people are in the position you two have been in, God forbid anybody would ever be in that position, you're faced with the same choice. So how is it that, I understand that a healthy person, they have to get on with their life, but it seems almost that if a person is faced with the idea that, okay, now I have to make it work with another person, how does it not take away from the first scenario? Am I making sense?
Sort of. Look, I think there's one big factor here that you're not taking into account, and that is that in my case, I was 22, I think, when I got married the first time, and I was 77 when I got married the second time. So my position in life, my future, my projects, and so forth and so on, were utterly different. So it isn't as if I sort of went back and made a different decision this time. I didn't go back. As one person who has a lot of experience in this area pointed out, with your first wife, you raised a family. Well, that requires a lot of juggling. That requires a lot of careful weighing of options, and because you have your relationship with your wife, you have the children, you have parents that you want to give attention to. So you have many different demands on your time, and you have to juggle them. And sometimes you do it right, sometimes you do it wrong. And there's a lot of things that are occupying you, so you're distracted a lot. It's a much different challenge from getting married when all your children are married. In fact, as of now anyway, all of my children are grandparents. So that's a very different state of life. So I think it could very well be that one person was the right choice and the ideal choice for living through all of that period of time, and maybe could still have been the right choice to continue. But it doesn't mean another person couldn't be the right choice to continue. It might not have worked out if we had gotten married in our 20s. Might not have worked out. So I don't think it's a question of casting aspersions on the other. I don't think that because you lived a very different life with the first partner.
May I ask a follow-up?
And by the way, try to be careful with the things that you wish don't happen. You say, I wouldn't wish on anybody. That sort of sounds like what you're hoping for is that spouses always die together. That's not always the best option. If they don't die together, then one's going to outlive the other.
Right.
The standard is that one spouse outlives the other spouse. To hope that that doesn't happen means that the children, for example, would have to always contend with losing both parents at the same time. That's not always the best option.
Well, no, but I mean, there are statistics about widowers versus widows, and widowers fare far worse.
100%.
Yeah, so I'm just saying from...
100%. That's 100% right. My children said to me, you can't be alone.
They said what? Sorry.
You can't be alone.
Yeah.
They were so right.
Rabbi, may I ask a follow-up?
Sorry?
May I ask a follow-up?
Mm-hmm.
In the case of someone's spouse passing away, their hand is forced, as opposed to if a person.
Oh, so you started with that, and then you hinted you were talking about divorce.
Well, that was I guess I was leading on to the second part. If somebody, God forbid, gets divorced, that's a completely different challenge because the person's still around. Maybe
100%.
What do you think the?
First of all, divorce is one of the 613 commandments. Now, having said that, let me just hold back your, crashingly obvious question of, so everybody should get divorced? It's a commandment? So let me tell you something which isn't popularly known. The word commandment isn't perhaps the best translation of mitzvah. Because there's a minchas chinuch on this, in detail, when he talks about tshuva, that there are certain mitzvos which are procedural. They say, if you want to accomplish such and such, this is how you do it. If you want to convert a living cow into kosher meat, you do it by killing the cow in a certain way. If you kill it that way, the meat will be kosher to eat. If you don't, it won't be kosher to eat. It doesn't go around killing cows. From the point of view of that mitzvah, it'd be fine if you never kill the cow. It just tells you how to get kosher meat. Something becomes tamei. You want to make it tahor, you put it into a mikveh. It could stay tamei also. Nothing in the mitzvah of immersion in mikveh tells you whether you should do it or should just ignore it. So divorce is a procedure which severs a marriage. Should you do it? Shouldn't you do it? It all depends upon the conditions. Might the world be a better place with no divorces? Depends on what prevents them. Sometimes it's just money that prevents them. Okay, that's at any rate. So you're right, but now it depends upon what kind of divorce it is. Many divorces are ugly, and they come from terrible conflict between the spouses. And the conflict could be in part justified, or it could be the result of bad character. There are many, many different possible scenarios. Sometimes there's discovery of incompatibility, and by discovery, I mean this. For example, when you have your first child, your life changes. Even your life changes, let alone your wife's life. And some people aren't ready for that. They aren't prepared for that. Especially husbands who suddenly feel, I've become number two. And I think that in a certain sense, it can give that appearance, but it doesn't have to be true. And that depends upon how he behaves and how she behaves. But it's a challenge. And it could happen. Or a question arises, and it's a question which they haven't considered, and to which they have very strong different reactions. Suppose you have a debilitated parent who either has to go into permanent assisted living or should come and live with you in the house. And often that splits the husband and wife. Especially, let's say, it's the husband's mother and it's the husband versus the wife feeling about it. And he thinks he has responsibility to his mother. And she says, I have responsibility to the house, to the children, and to my husband. And with her there, it's going to be very difficult to fulfill that responsibility. And then that puts a lot of tension on the marriage, and marriage could split over that. And maybe it should split over that. I have a friend who deals with these things, and he told me the newest research is this. This is fascinating. You know, it's terrible for children when there's a divorce. The younger they are, the more terrible it is. But studies have shown, now, those words mean that's what we think today, and tomorrow it could be different. We could have made a mistake in the statistics. I don't believe in these, things as gospel, but what they think today is it depends mostly on what the attitude of the two parents is towards one another after the divorce. If there's continued hatred, continued fighting and bickering, and then they'll make competition over the children. Each one will want the children on his or her side, so they'll do things to try to bring the child over to that side, and then by doing that by discrediting the other side, that continuing tension is what does most of the damage to the children. So if the parents are big enough to say, okay, we can't get along, but let's cooperate on making a coherent, not relationship, but a coherent policy of dealing with it in such a way to protect the children, that could save a lot of grief for the children later. But you're right. It is an entirely different circumstance. I have a friend who got divorced a year ago and just got remarried, and in his first marriage, it was impossible. It wasn't impossible. Although he wasn't perfect, it wasn't his fault. She had certain problems, and she couldn't. They tried therapy. They had 5 different therapists, but he tried, and she explained why she couldn't try. And in the end, it was just hopeless. So they got divorced, and he's now happily remarried. And the kids, he has a wonderful relationship with his kids because he invested in. He, in fact, employs his ex-wife. She was working for him the whole time, and he continues to employ her. So the children see our father isn't against our mother. He isn't taking revenge on our mother. On the contrary, he's providing her with a living. And that makes them feel that their father is a good person. In fact, one of his children said to him, "You're a good person." So you can save that if you work on it the correct way. Yeah.
So I heard this idea about the 4 letters of Hashem's name can be linked to Lashon Hara, lying, hurtful speech, and
Flattery or joking, yeah.
And then by speaking them, you prevent. It's like a Kabbalistic idea of him coming into the world. Like, do you have anything cool on that idea?
I just know this is a very controversial business here. There are 4 types of criminal speech. And these 4 types, you have to understand, the commentators explain, it's not that you tripped up once because you weren't paying attention. It's habitual and part of your character to do that. It's just part of how you live. One is Lashon Hara, and one is Leitzanus, which means being a... it's worse than a clown, like a cynical clown.
Nihilist?
Was that?
A nihilist?
No, a nihilist might not express himself at all. This is a person who speaks in a certain way. He could just drift because there's nothing that matters. Nihilism doesn't describe his speech. You know, my oldest son has a whole worldwide institution. He made a public gathering in Citi Field Stadium 12 years ago, and it was very controversial, and will it work or won't it work? And 3 days beforehand, there's someone who calls himself Orthodox, and he has a blog, and he writes his opinion. He says, "I'm going to give you my usual cynical opinion." And I thought, really? What mitzvah are you doing exactly by being a cynic? Which mitzvah is that? I'm just interested. There's 613 mitzvahs, Which one is that? I'm not aware of a mitzvah to be cynical. He's proud of it. He writes it for the public. I'm giving you my cynical opinion, my usual cynical opinion. So then he'll make fun of something, and the cynic makes fun of things which are really valuable. When he makes fun of them, they lose their value. They become something to laugh at. So there's the Lashon Hara and the cynic and the liar and the flatterer. So Chazal say a person who is in one of these classes, that means habitually and premeditatedly speaking in these criminal ways, one or more, will not receive the presence of God. So the Mabit asks, are we talking here about before tshuva or after tshuva? If you're talking about before tshuva, why is that special? Any crime that a person does, and does it habitually, and he doesn't take steps to improve himself, could prevent him from receiving the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if these 4 are special, it's got to be after doing tshuva. That means it comes out that even if he does tshuva, he's left with a permanent liability. Not everybody agrees on that. There are many other opinions that was not so. But it gives you an indication of how serious this is. And Lashon Hara in particular is terribly serious. And in fact, on Rosh Hashanah, when you have 100 shofar blasts, they divide up into 3 groups of 3 plus 10. And the 3 groups of 3 are against the 3 great categories of commandments that you have to die rather than transgress. murder and idol worship and certain sexual unions. And the last 10 are for the sake of Lashon Hara. It's that important to be classified together with those. So it is definitely terribly central. Now, why is it so central? So I can tell you one thing. The Greeks defined the human being as a rational animal. That definition for them captures the essence of what it is to be human. The Maharal says we don't define humanity that way. We define humanity as the speaking animal. It says in Genesis that God blew into Adam's nostrils a breath of life, and Unclus, the Aramaic commentary, writes he became a speaking spirit. What's the difference between reason and speech? Well, typically, except for aberrations, speech reflects reason. Speech expresses your reason. But then there's the difference between meditated reason and expressed reason. The difference is that when you speak, you bring that reason into the physical world. You make it potentially available for somebody else. You cross the line from the spiritual into the physical. From our point of view, that's the crucial contribution that a human being makes. He takes that which is spiritual and uses it to infuse the physical world with it. Your mitzvahs do that, and the connections to you do that. So that means speech is extremely important. And corrupting speech, that's terrible, terrible degradation of the essential of the human being. You take a look at the Shemona Esrei, what you say right before and what you say right after, both speak about asking for purity of speech. Because in Shemona Esrei, you have to speak. You're using speak to communicate with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Well, just on that note, what is it that we say in the beginning of Alakai Netzor, where we're asking God to guard our tongue from speaking evil and our lips from speaking deceit? Like, what's the difference between those two things?
Well, first of all, sometimes verses repeat things for emphasis. It doesn't always have to mean. Well, nirma, deceit, implies that I'm corrupting somebody else. Whereas ra would be much more general. As something is just evil. Whether it corrupt somebody else or not. Even the word corrupt is not right either. It means to deceive. It means to deceive. I'm hesitating because there's a difference between deception and deceit. Let's see if you can figure this out. What's the difference between deception and deceit?
Can deceit also deceive the deceiver?
Oh, that's tricky. We do talk about self-deception. We do, and the question what that could possibly mean. When I say that A deceives B, that usually means A knows the truth, but he's got a way to get it that B shouldn't know the truth. He believes something that's false. Very hard to say that A deceives B if A himself doesn't know the truth. So then, how could you deceive yourself? You can't play both ends of the game where the deceiver knows the truth and the one deceived doesn't know the truth. And that's one of the reasons why psychologies split people up. Freud had you to be the ego, the superego, and the id. And there are others, transactional analysis and others, split it up because some of the things that go on in a person's life require more than one agent. Without that, can you conquer your own spirit, like we talk about a Gibor? Who's doing the conquering and who's getting conquered? A thing can't conquer itself. Where's the resistance coming from? So you split it up. Okay, so what did you ask? Let me just get back on.
Rabbi was going to say the difference between
Deceit, right.
deceit.
So deceit is always wrong. Deceit is always bad. Deceit refers to the crime of misleading someone else. Deception doesn't have to be bad. Sometimes it's right to deceive people. Even Immanuel Kant got this wrong. You hear hurried footsteps outside, and there's a bang on the door. You open the door, the guy says, Reuven's coming after me with a gun. Tell him I went around the corner. And he hides in your closet. And now, 20 seconds later, Reuven arrives with the gun. Where is he? So Kant said, tell him he's in the closet. You can never lie about anything. Most people think that Kant made a mistake there. No, he went around the corner. He caught a cab. Run quickly. You may catch him. And then slam the door and call the cops. That's deception, all right? That's the right thing to do. That's not deceit. Deceit, by definition, is a crime. Now, when it says there, mirma, the word mirma can be used either way. Your brother came with mirma, and Uncle translates chachmasa, wisdom. He told me he was you because that's what had to be done. He deceived me, but the deception was perfectly justified. So here the word mirma means deceit. I think the translation that you have there is very good because in this context, it means that. It doesn't mean deception, because sometimes deception is right. You know, a guy who has a heart condition and he's being tested for cancer, and the test is terrible. He says to the doctor, well, what were the results of the test? Oh, the test was terrible. Bang! He drops dead of a heart attack on yours. That's not the right thing to do. Maybe you say, well, you know, we need another test, and we have to refine it. And I can't. It's preliminary. Figure out. Go talk to a psychologist. Talk to his family. How should we deal with this? Right. In the meantime, don't tell them the truth. So the idea there is that since I know that speech is so precious and so central to my spiritual identity, I'm asking for divine help to make sure that my speech is appropriate. That's a question. So that's one of the reasons why the fourth elements of habitually corrupted speech are terribly injurious, and the Maggid could say what he said, and we link to the four letters of God's name, and it could be associated on Rosh Hashanah with the last 10 shofar blasts, which puts it in the association of the three most important elements of Torah. And I'll make one more comment before I go. This also raises a very delicate issue. I look at a particular action which the tradition classifies as wrong to do. Now, we have different levels of legal stringency. Can I say, well, look how legally serious it is. The more legally serious it is, the worse action it is. The answer is no. Sometimes an action which legally is on a very light level can be regarded by the tradition as a very, very wrong act. The wrongness of it doesn't have to be reflected in the legal severity of the act. So, for example, according to many, the prohibition against having casual sexual relations with a non-Jew is rabbinic. It's rabbinic. But the Rambam writes that a man who does that and deposits his zera in a non-Jew, and that zera could contribute to the creation of a non-Jewish soul, it's a gigantic tragedy. It's just that so this tragedy isn't registered in the legal status of the crime. You know, that distinction is not obvious. You might have thought that the legal status of the crime should reflect its severity, but this is a case, and there are other cases as well. So you just have to know, when you talk about what's more important than what, there are different step ladders of qualification, and they do not correspond with one another always. Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be considered on the same category as wasting seed, or is that Rabbanan too?
Yes. And the Tanya has a very interesting, he even goes further with the Tanya. He says even within this one, there are differences. For example, the outcome of wasting seed is a worse outcome. The bad spiritual forces created by wasting seed are worse than a bad union. But on the other hand, in the case of a bad union, the bad spiritual forces that are created are deposited in a recipient who gets strength from it. Whereas the wasted seed doesn't do that. So each one has a dimension that's worse than the other, even within the same type of performance. In one respect, a forbidden union is worse than wasted seed. In another respect, it's the opposite. So that it's a very complex and subtle system. Yeah.
It's like one sentence further than what Benny was just talking about. But could you explain the "let my soul be as dust to all"?
Yeah. First of all, this is a standard mistranslation in the English translations. The word in Hebrew is afar, and afar means soil or dirt. Of course, you don't want to write dirt in the English of a siddur, right? That doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound nice. I should be dirt like dirt. But if you think about it, dust is much worse. Dust blows in the wind. Dust is absolutely useless. We all live from dirt. All things that produce food start with dirt. Start with plants, and they have things that eat the plants, and so on and so on. Without dirt, we'd have nothing. So what it really means is that you should be capable of subduing your own point of view and your own interests and your own goals for the sake of sacrificing to others. And then some want to say, and if you notice, let's say you have a war. We're having a war now, right? So you have troops and you have tanks, right, all rolling over the dirt. Now just imagine you have a troop of tanks to go through, and they all ride over the dirt. And now you want to plant a seed. You won't have any problem at all. Just put it in the ground and it'll grow just like it would have grown before. The dirt isn't injured in any way by the tanks rolling over it. So on the one hand, you could be someone who stepped up, but you can be told, even so, you won't be injured thereby if you accept it. You accept it and live with it. And there are cases where this has got to be consistent with protecting yourself. You're not supposed to become anybody's victim. It's our principle that someone who's coming to kill you, kill him first. And not like in idiotic American law where he has to pull his gun first. Otherwise, how do you know? No, if you know he's coming to get you, get up early, go hide in the road, and when he's going by, shoot him. You have to wait for him to attack you and make it a fair fight. He's a murderer. He doesn't deserve a fair fight. So it's not a question of allowing yourself to be victimized. But sometimes you're standing up for your honor. If you're indignant, don't push me around. That's it. No, that usually not accepted. He says what he says. Let him talk. Yeah. You got a question?
Yeah. In the case of a rodent, don't you have to injure, if you can shoot them in the leg? It's better to do that than to actually kill them.
It is if you can save yourself that way. That's right. But you don't have to wait for him to come to you. If he comes to you and he's stronger than you are, he's going to kill you, or he may kill you. You don't have to wait for that. You can go out and hide and get him on the way. Indeed, Abba Malachteret, you're talking Torah talk, right? He digs a tunnel into your house, and he's busy twisting the dials on your safe, and he doesn't know you're in the closet behind him. You can shoot him in the back. He's Ein Lo Dam. He's sacrificed his life by being prepared to kill you.
Really? In that case, it would be you could shoot him in the back just as much as shooting him in the leg.
Yeah. Abba Malachteret is more severe.